So we have a very interesting lady, Tejashree Joshi, joining us today from Mumbai. And as I read her accomplishments, something that really struck a personal chord with me, and this is about the work that you're doing with wetland management, ma'am. Nothing is more interesting than this part. And she's very, very deeply involved as part of Godrej's initiative to save the mangroves, wetland management. And the reason why I find this very interesting is my younger son, who's 17, who just turned 18, is a very avid bird watcher, and he has photographed over 1,100 species, among the youngest Indians with so many species. And he authored a book at the age of 16 about the ecology of Ahmedabad from a bird's perspective. And what he noticed, I think many others have noticed, as the water bodies vanish, the birds vanish. As the birds vanish, I'll be very straight and honest, if the birds and bees vanish, we will vanish. There is such a tremendous connection between a small bee, a house sparrow, many other birds, and our own survival. It is only when you read these articles and understand this science behind it, where human beings think we are at the top of the food chain, but actually we are nobody. We are so threatened. And this is because we have axed our own feet. We have been careless in the way that we manage our environment, our world. She leads the environmental sustainability at Godrej and Boyce manufacturing company. And all of us know Godrej is a household name. For those of you from outside India, Godrej is a very respected business house with interest spanning, it's a very vast spectrum of products they manufacture. They're also into services. With over 20 years of experience, she has facilitated strategy development, target setting, and achievement under Godrej's sustainability initiative of Good and Green. They call it Good and Green Vision, which includes achieving zero waste to landfill, carbon neutrality, positive water balance, reducing energy and water consumption, improving energy productivity, and increasing renewable energy use towards charting out a low carbon pathway for the Godrej business. She leads programs for environmental studies and planning for new facilities, design and development of environmental management systems, etc. They are also into the extended producer responsibility conference for e-waste and plastic waste. She is sitting on these teams, panels, and she represents Godrej and Boyce in the India Plastic Pact initiative. She supports facilitation of green buildings and product certification, life cycle assessment and sustainability reporting for environmental indicators under GRI standards framework for the organization. She is in charge, which I mentioned before, of the Godrej wetland management mangroves and biodiversity enhancement. Under her leadership, Godrej has undertaken many first-of-its-kind biodiversity initiatives like estimation of carbon sequestration, development of biodiversity index for Godrej Vikhroli campus, and creation and enhancement of biodiversity hotspots and theme gardens. She holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Environmental Sciences and a Master Diploma in Business Management. She's also, very, very much involved with the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, for mainstreaming biodiversity consciousness amongst Indian businessmen. So, my friends, please put together your hands to a lady champion. And what a way to end the day. Thank you, Tejashree.
So good evening, everybody. And I would first like to thank Mr. Murthy because he reached out to me in terms of participating in this Kaizen Congress. This is my first time that I'm attending this Congress. And I saw that why did we didn't connect earlier, because as far as Godrej and Boyce is concerned, we drive Kaizens in a very big way across our business lines and across levels. And one thing that we have included as part of Kaizen evaluation is indicators on sustainability. So while we talk about quality, we talk about efficiency improvement, we talk about reducing losses and cost saving, we have also identified indicator on sustainability and categorized Kaizens on sustainability. So it is a good synergy, because while the strategy is top driven, the performance happens bottoms up. And that's where the integration of two happens, and a company can declare anything, but it has to deliver on those commitments. And that's where everybody plays a role on sustainability, and I'll come to that as a concluding part of my presentation. But at the same time, I'll put forward some thoughts in terms of what each of us can do in terms of driving sustainability in our businesses, whichever line function you are part of. First thing I want to just ask you, am I visible? And is it okay if I'm not visible? Because I don't think that is very important. Yeah, sure, thank you. And that's always a problem with me, sorry. So, but nonetheless. So, as far as Godrej and Boyce is concerned, I'll talk a little about it, because you all know the brand, you all know how responsible and ethical the brand has been in India for many years. But let's go back to a little bit of basics in terms of why are we discussing sustainability so much today. Now, there are some very interesting statistics. If you look at this particular slide, you know, the Earth's temperature, and we talk about global warming, and we are actually experiencing it, the heat waves, and so many impacts that we today recognize. But the Earth's temperature has just risen by 0.08 degrees Celsius per decade since the 1880s. Now, as far as the number goes, this is very minuscule if you see. But what does it mean when we actually talk about global warming? So, what we are seeing is that since the 1880s and 1900s, the Earth's temperature has risen somewhere beyond a degree Celsius, and we are talking about 2 degrees reduction, or 1.5 degrees scenario, as we say the SBTI, or the Science-Based Target Initiative. And we'll also have a context in terms of how we have changed. And if you look at this graph, over the last, say, around 4 decades, you can see a very, very, very evident change in terms of warming. We have accelerated in terms of growth, in terms of consumerism, in terms of resource consumption. And therefore, it is leading to impacts today that we see as climate change. And I don't think there is anybody now today denying climate change. That era is past. We all accept there is climate change, and now we're moving towards an era where we want to look at how do we actually face and mitigate this, or control the climate change collectively. And this is not one country or one state or one city's problem. It is everybody's problem. Every human being that is existing on Earth is facing this problem. More so, the countries which are vulnerable, the oceanic nations who are facing the impact of sea level rise. But is their doing? It's not their doing. It's probably done by somebody who has been on the path of growth and consumerism. But that does that elevate the problem? It doesn't. Despite of that disparity being there, we all need to be conscious about this and work towards, and we don't need to follow the same path that the developed countries have done. While we grow and while we progress on our GDPs and on our economic progress, let's do it consciously, and that's the whole intent, because we are very much vulnerable to this climate change. Now, what is this? This is the climate change rise that we have seen over the years. So what do we need to do? And we also, and Mr. Murthy has been saying that it's sustainable if maybe we don't have tea or we have less food, but the entire planet needs to go on a carbon diet. That's what we need to do today. And that is something which will be driving all our initiatives in future, whether we like it as a business or we don't like it. And the first entity who would need to show this leadership and this path is going to be the industrial sector. Government is there to support with the policies. They have their own role to play. But we can't only rely on what government does. What we have to understand is, if there are targets that government has set, every industry needs to set more stringent targets and achieve that before the government targets are declared. an aggregation of that which help the entire state and the entire country with so many vulnerable population to move towards more sustainable path. Now there's something, and many of you would have seen people who are in the sustainability space, we talk about this. We talk about Earth Overshoot Day. That's something which is a calculation. With the consumerism and the extraction of resources that we today have, what we are seeing over many years now is we are utilizing the resources our planet generates in 1 year time frame within 6 months. And every year, if you say barring the year of COVID, this has been actually shortening. Now it is somewhere near July. Yeah. So the resource that the earth generates over its period, different resources, we as humanity are consuming those resources within a time frame of 6 to 7 months. And what that is leaving us is in a debt. And when we talk about sustainability and the definitions you would have read, sustainability talks about you do your activities in a way that you are not hampering the future of your next generation. And what are we doing? We are leaving our next generation in debts for Mother Earth, in terms of resource use, and in terms of not knowing what to do if they face a situation. And today we are seeing many instances, Bangalore being the latest example that we can see, and water, unfortunately, the life giver is undervalued to such an extent that we only value it when it is not there. Unfortunately, there is no cost to it. It is free, it is available, it is polluted, it is abused, everything the water sources face. But we don't realize it till it doesn't come in our tap. And that's the fallacy. And therefore, every small bit, and you were talking about what we can do as individuals, is going to contribute towards this resource consumption. So we need to improve before it is too late. We always talk in terms of business language. If there is something which is not happening, what is your plan B? Here, there is no plan B. In fact, here there is no planet B. And we all are here, we have to stay on this planet and therefore be more responsible in terms of what we are doing and what we are delivering as individuals. Now, again, and I think this has been discussed, so I'll skip this and take you through very quickly. But net zero is a terminology, and every now and then the sustainability space comes up with some terminology which is new, which is catching the attention of people. At one point of time, sustainability word itself was such a unique thing and in an industry to hear. And today I think it is the most abused word. Everybody talks about being sustainable. And then we have so many examples of, like it was said, greenwashing, false declaration. Why? It's because somewhere the consumer is now demanding companies to be more sustainable. And that's where, in the urge of being seen as more sustainable, companies false declare. And which is a very dangerous situation to get in, because we are not realizing that this is the biggest business risk we run today, of being greenwashing, of being false towards our commitment and our performance on those commitments. Transparency, therefore, becomes extremely important today in the entire reporting framework, where companies may not have performed on a certain indicator, but then you need to be transparent and declare to your stakeholders that this is what has happened, this is the reasons, but you also need to have some action plan in terms of how do you work on those areas which you have not achieved as your commitment to a sustainable business. And again, net zero, when we're talking about, so very quickly, it is basically reaching net zero means removing the equal amount of carbon dioxide from atmosphere as we are releasing it into. And this was, so what it actually means is also, if we look at, there needs to be a urgent coordinated global efforts on this, because we as a resident of this globe have a very limited budget on carbon emissions. And what we talk about as a 1.5 degree scenario is looking at a back calculation in terms of how much budget we have if we have to follow a 1.5 degree pathway of warming, and only that much amount of carbon today we can released to the atmosphere to safeguard ourselves, to safeguard humanity, to safeguard biodiversity, and to safeguard all other living organisms on the earth, which also have an equal right to the resources, but do not have any voice. And I think we have to understand that if you see the whole value chain, or if you see the food chain, I don't think man fits anywhere. It is the only animal which is a parasite on all other organisms. We don't play any role in the whole food chain. We are only playing the role of a destructor. And that's unfortunately very true. When we also do interventions, we most of the times do it the wrong way. In our zeal to quickly achieve the goals that are set by our organizations or any other commitments, many steps that are taken in sustainability are wrong, and you see the impact after a long time. Because nature doesn't respond immediately, but it definitely responds at some point of time. And only then we realize that we were taking all the steps wrong. So looking at what our impact of our actions is going to be with a very, very minute scrutiny is the way forward now for humanity. We can't keep doing things which we were doing earlier and the way that we were doing earlier. And this, all of us needs to be very, very conscious. In our zeal to make spaces green, we started planting all invasive species. What has the invasive species done? They have destroyed the local biodiversity. Not only they have destroyed, because because there are certain species which are fast growing, good survival, in our zeal to make it so that our cost of sustaining them is less, we started planting those trees. And those trees are taking up so much resource that it is destroying the local biodiversity. And when the floral biodiversity or the plant's biodiversity is destroyed, the entire food chain gets disturbed. The microfauna, the birds, the insects, the very small butterflies, bees, all of them get impacted because they are not getting their nesting sites, they are not getting their reproduction sites, they are not getting their proliferation sites, and so on and so forth. And we entirely destroy the local biodiversity. So historic understanding of a space, of a land, before we take interventions is extremely important. We may need some time to do that, but we can't make haste when we are talking about rejuvenating any places with respect to, particularly with respect to biodiversity. And that is something that I wanted to mention. But when we look at the global scenario, and this many of you would have seen, what will happen if we continue the way we are doing? You would see that we would warm the planet to above 3 degrees Celsius. Now what happens with that? All your oceanic islands, small islands like Maldives, many other who are hardly a couple of feet above sea level will get, large part of them will get submerged. What is the role they have played in global warming? Nothing. It has been played by the US, Europe, and large producers. Many of Indian cities are vulnerable to submerge. Many of our islands are vulnerable to submergence. What is the role we have played? Historically not much, but now we are playing. And when we are doing that, I think we don't need to follow the same or commit the same crimes that the developed world has committed and now are preaching the developing world. We don't need to do that. But we have our own conscience, we have our own intellect, we have our own studies, and we know where we want to take ourselves as a nation. And therefore, it becomes very pertinent, how do we follow the path of development along with being sustainable, conscious, and protecting our planet and our country's biodiversity. And India is one of the most biodiverse nation in the world, and we need to protect this heritage that we have. So, you mentioned about the difference between net zero and carbon neutral. So far, we have had the leverage of offsetting what we were emitting. So we keep emitting, use the same technology, the same machinery, the same methodology, same processes, keep emitting the carbon, but somewhere we are doing tree plantation, somewhere we are purchasing credits, somewhere we are doing some CSR activities of, say, solar installations or stores which are using sustainable fuels and many other, and then say, yes, we are carbon neutral. This was okay till the last decade, not anymore. As we move towards a net zero regime, it is very clear that whatever you are emitting needs to be scrubbed off from the atmosphere to the larger extent possible with a hierarchical approach. And what is the hierarchical approach? And we all know that. I mean, we follow that in our industries. Look at efficiencies first. That is the starting point for everything that you do on sustainability. Look at how sustainable you are, how efficient you are in your processes, in your procurement, in your logistics, and this is a clear bottom line advantage. We don't even need to use, a lens of sustainability for this. It is very clear benefit for an organization that you are saving cost when you're doing that. So look at efficiencies. Then you look at moving towards more cleaner options, either for fuel or how do you drive your processes. Whether your machineries are old, whether your systems are old, whether you need to replace them in time. And believe me, in energy, I think the paybacks are so fast, which are not in water, but energy, definitely you should look at the low-hanging fruits, and there is a strategy you can make. You can look at the low-hanging fruits, you can look at then the investments, and there are ways of how do you manage these investments, and I'll come to that. These are strategies available for an industry. And that's not rocket science. It's very, very logical that we apply this logic to sustainability as well. Once you have looked at a cleaner option and adopted it, then look at substitution of your high carbon emitting substances with those cleaner options and bring your carbon footprint to minimal levels. Only then you can offset the remaining carbon with the kind of credits which are specified, which are removal kind of credits. That is what net zero is. And I think this understanding over here needs to be very important because all of us play a role in it. And like I said, I'll come to that. So we should be very clear about where we are going. It is not carbon neutral that we are now traversing the path. It is the net zero path that the entire world is looking at. And when we are talking about 1.5 degree scenarios, it talks about any nation peaking its emission within a shortest time period through these interventions of cleaner fuel, of energy efficiencies, etc. And then start decarbonizing. Decarbonizing to a level where the warming will be limited to 1.5 degrees. And that's what collectively we need to do. And another important thing, when we talk about net zero, the perception is we need to talk about carbon. No. There are many indicators. There are largely 4 indicators. Of course, energy feeds into carbon. But we also talk about water and waste. And that's where we talk about the same philosophy for water. In terms of when we are talking about water positivity or water neutrality, it talks about removing your losses, improving your efficiencies, look at substitute water sources like recycled water, capture the resource that is falling on your premises through the rainwater harvesting, and then you look at offsetting beyond your campus. Offsetting beyond your campus should be the last resort. It shouldn't be the first resort to declare yourself water positive, because that's the easy way out. There are many villages who need water interventions, and very happily companies go and do it and declare themselves 3 times, 4 times water positive. How effective is that? Because you are impacting the resource in one place and you are putting it back in some other place. Where is the summation in this? So we have to be conscious when we even drive our sustainability and CSR programs and look at how do we effectively mitigate the requirement of the society through our right kind of interventions, looking at their stated and unstated needs, so that we get a very robust license to operate on social front as well. So let's look at water and waste. Waste, we spoke about resource. Why resource is very, very important? Because I'll give you even statistics. There was a draft national resource policy which was put out by the government. Now if you see, the draft national policy on resources says that the world extracts around 550 odd tons of resources per square meter or something like that, some unit. Whereas India today is extracting 1500 kgs or tons of resource, whatever, per unit. Now see the disparity. We are extracting 3 times. And that's because we are a growing economy. We are having a lot of, our population is one factor which is very, very impacting the entire aspects. But at the same time, how conscious are we on resource conservation? We were traditionally. And everybody knows that. I don't want to reiterate it. But then we have lost that knowledge. We have lost those methodologies. And now we need to relearn that. And relearning is always difficult because you need to make behavioral changes. And that's where the challenge comes for every individual to be more sustainable. We have looked at the Sustainable Development Goals and the overall framework that the United Nations had put forward for all nation states. And India also follows that, as well as India has its own commitments on sustainability, and there many of the commitments we have actually achieved. But let me go a little further. What are we doing when we are investing in sustainable resources? We are actually investing in our future. We are actually investing on sustainability of our businesses, of our lives, of our communities, and also of all those vulnerable sections of the society that are co-residing with us along with the industry. ESG framework, so I'll just skip that. I think there were many good, eminent speakers who have explained to you what ESG means. And we were talking about environment and social. Why governance is very important? Because governance gives the investor a confidence that the organization is worth investing. And when you talk about governance, it will also govern your progress on environment and sustainability. So the overall governance plays as a backbone for everything that an organization sets as a strategy, not only on profits, but people and planet as well. And so we need to be, what my CEO says is, we have to be profitable, we have to be predictable, and then we have to be sustainable. So these are the very key words that any investor would look at for an organization to be if they want to put their money in the company. So I'll take you very quickly through what we as an organization has been doing. So you all know this group is 125, now it's 126 years rather, and a company surviving for so many years. It has seen the entire transition of the country in terms of from being into under the British rule and then after independence, transitioning with the growth of India, collaborating with the government, collaborating and supporting the development path of India. 125 years is a not small time. That's what we call as sustainable business. And there are quite a few business houses in India who are that. And there are examples. What governance plays as an important role in terms of making the company sustainable over so many years. But it also indicates that these companies had a foresight of looking at the risk a business would have in terms of not looking at a more sustainable pathway. And Tata's, Godrej's, we also have Mahindra's and many other companies have progressed this path. So as a conglomerate, over 16,000 crores of revenue, we also have 14 business units under Godrej and Boyce, and very diverse. You all know locks, which was the first product which was manufactured, to today India's Godrej supporting India's space program through the Chandrayaan, through the Akash, and all our missile programs as well. So frankly, such a diverse business with diverse kind of products. And how do you then drive sustainability across these businesses, looking at these businesses to perform at the same level that every peer is performing? Is it the state? That's a utopian state. It's not the state. Every industry has its own compulsions. But the intent, the target doesn't change. And that's what I was saying. Sustainability is delivered through a bottoms-up approach. It is planned through a top-down approach. But when it is planned, you need to understand the requirements of the bottom-up approach. So it is both ways. We look at the global trends. We also look at what our company is doing. Where do we want to go from here over the next 7 to 10 years, and then craft our sustainability plans. That's what we intend and our companies should be doing. And I see that I have very little time, but I'll expedite. So as a company, in the purpose, you will see we have always elaborated sustainability and stewardship as one of our vision and targets. And our values also talk about environment stewardship. And from this we have crafted what Mr. Murthy was saying, our good and green philosophy or our strategy on sustainability. When we talk about good, we talk about good for the society. And when we talk about green, it is always making your own establishments, your products, your processes greener, and your communities sustainable and greener. It's been a long journey since Godrej and Boyce has pursued sustainability. In fact, we crafted the good and green goals in 2010. However, this dates back much more. The Mangroves Conservation Initiative started in 1984, and the decision of protecting this land in 1985 through a trust where the real estate value in Mumbai, and I don't need to mention that, we all are aware about that, locking these large areas of land for conservation till posterity is a big decision. And it only it can only be done if there is a highest level of commitment and sensitivity towards why this is important for a city like Mumbai. It is contextual, but at the same time, I think it is very important to look at the enormity of this decision. And since then, we have very actively been protecting the mangroves forest on our land in Mumbai. Nearly 3,000 acres, and you can just estimate the value when there was no law to protect mangroves. The country did not know what mangroves was. There were very little studies on the ecosystem, and very few people knew why it is important for a coastal city. Today, all of us know after the tsunami. But that's it. So that's what vision is. And those kind of visions have been driven by the family, like bringing the entire green building movement in India. So Mr. Godrej is the chairman of Indian Green Building Council, which drives the green building movement in India. Today, India has the second highest footprint of green building. And that's the commitment, where the first green business, platinum rated green building was set up in Hyderabad, which is funded by Godrej. The entire engineering was provided by Godrej along with CIA. And imagine the impact that this kind of development has when the buildings are greener. We focus on 4 verticals, the good and green products. The philosophy is, while you are driving your sustainability practices within your campuses, it also needs to be taken to your consumer. And how do you do it? It is by specifically designing products which are green, which are good for society, and having target-based approach in terms of doing that. Greener India is you're greening your spaces, and then we have 2 indicators on sustainability. Ensuring employability, that is skill development. There's a lot of focus, and we talk about various skills, multiple skills that we drive, which support our products in the ecosystem, but also gives livelihood to so many underprivileged youths. And then look at the community requirements. On terms of environmental impact, I'll not go through the details. I'll share the presentation. It can be accessed. We're looking at energy productivity, water positivity, zero waste to landfill, and preserving biodiversity on our campus. And through our all manufacturing locations, like I mentioned. Energy conservation. There are many initiatives you can take, and I'll not read every point, but there needs to be a holistic energy management approach. Today, we also need to leverage IoT and technology in terms of knowing real-time data, so that you can plug your losses, track your efficiencies, and take very timely and realistic actions so that the losses are minimized. And the impact, therefore, on the environment is much lesser. Renewable energy, I spoke to you, that's a focus on transitioning the energy. Water conservation across manufacturing locations. We look at water audits specifically for all locations. Use of low flow fixtures, I think these are the low hanging fruits. But also look at 100% recycling, and I think now most of the places has this mandatory for your manufacturing licenses. But zero liquid discharge through all effluents or also your storm waters. Maximizing the utilization of recycled water. Look at applications where you can substitute fresh water use by recycled water. Promote and use nature-based solutions. That's where you are choosing a green solution for a greening initiative. And so we should be very conscious in terms of what we are looking. And we also need to maximize our harvesting the potential of rainwater on our campuses and beyond. Rainwater harvesting, I already spoke about. The strategies can be for all locations. We need to look at very simple aspects like assessing impact, what is the withdrawal. Again, use technology for real-time groundwater monitoring and take quick actions, timely actions in terms of mitigating our impact. Waste reduction. Waste reduction is now moving towards circularity. And waste no more is waste, it is resource. And we need to identify all our waste as a resource. We had done a project where we identified around 850 materials that were used across our manufacturing. And then an innovation project, which looked at what could be the upcycling of these materials rather than just recycling them as materials which are going out of the factory. And there were very interesting case study which was done. And it threw out so many good ideas that industry can very easily adopt. But necessarily, you don't need to do it. You need to create an ecosystem which will do that. EPR is today mandatory, but that is actually taking the responsibility of your footprint beyond your campuses. And today, we don't only have plastic and e-waste EPR. We also have an EPR on tires. We have on batteries. Shortly, there would be a EPR probably on textiles or even C&D waste. So construction industry will also not be spared from that. And therefore, looking at circularity is our de-risking the impending compliance requirements. And we need to be conscious in terms of designing our businesses. And again, look at your impact beyond your campuses through your colonies, through your other establishments which are there because of your industry existing. So this is one example. We are looking at the entire 3,000 acres campus in Vikhroli, a zero garbage to landfill campus. It recycles around 10 metric tons of waste every day from all our establishments. So far, we have diverted over 20,000 metric tons of municipal solid waste from going to the overflowing dumping grounds of Mumbai. So this is something which we started before the rule on solid waste management came. Started in 2014, the rule came in 2018. Proactive approach helps you comply to the regulations which are impending in a very easy way. So this is something. We spoke about biodiversity. What biodiversity requires is you map the biodiversity in your campus and look at all those biodiverse areas. We have a large campus, we have the mangrove forest, we have other natural habitats, the theme gardens which are created by us, industrial and residential areas. This is integrating urban setups with green spaces. You need to have the green and grey infrastructure integrated for a more sustainable development of a township. Obviously, when you do any type of plantations, may it be roadside plantations, anything, be conscious of the species that you are using for your landscapes and your green areas. Use or select only indigenous and local species so that they survive, you require less resources, and they protect the biodiversity of the region. Terrace gardens, as part of green buildings, it helps you mitigate the heat ingress in the building, but it also creates its own micro-ecosystem. So it supports the fauna. And that's where we have one of the largest green building, on our green building, we have the largest terrace garden in Mumbai, around 1.5 lakh square feet. And it has all native species which support microfauna. Also, one more important thing you can do is look at what is the baseline of your biodiversity. Draw a biodiversity index in terms of all your species, native, adapted, invasive, on flora and fauna. And only then you will need the gaps and take actions to mitigate this. For that, you need a biodiversity strategy, which is appropriate for your context, and an approach. So as far as mangroves is concerned, we have taken a three-pronged approach of research, because first we need to know the ecosystem. Conservation, the research inputs go into conservation, and awareness, which is the most important pillar, because it's not enough to do it ourselves and keep it to ourselves. This knowledge needs to spread. And to spread this, we need to focus on awareness. There is a dedicated team who looks at awareness. You also map the ecosystem services that these biodiverse spaces actually provide you as a city, as a town, as your particular area. And our mangroves have been sequestering more than 50,000, 60,000 metric tons of carbon every year. Today, it holds a carbon stock of more than 12 lakh carbon within itself. And that's a study we had conducted, one of the first in Mumbai. It also provides a lot of habitat for flora and fauna, and livelihood for the local fisherfolk. Today, we also use technology in conservation in terms of spreading awareness, use of app, use of website, but at the same time, geotagging in terms of IoTs, sending out data from the forest. It helps a lot in terms of taking decisions and timely decisions. And the impact needs to be evaluated once in a while. What have we been doing? Is it good? And how is it creating an impact to the society? That gives you a very good mirror in terms of what do we need to do in future. We can't overlook the community that we are operating in. At the same time, we also need to, like I mentioned, keep tracking what we have achieved over the years. We started the Good and Green in 2010, and over the decade, we have achieved quite some good numbers in terms of our commitment on each of the indicators that we had set forward to. But now we need to move ahead. It is just not within your campuses. It is beyond the campus with your stakeholders, partners, and everybody that is connected with you. And that's where supply chain sustainability is the buzzword today. Supply chain is very important because a lot of part of our manufacturing processes are outsourced. And frankly, if you don't consider that, it is like you are actually denying almost 50 to 60% of your impact on the environment. And therefore, today, if you look at the reporting, the BRSR is also asking you to report on the supply chain sustainability. And that's the reason why they want the investors to know or have a visibility of what is your impact across supply chain. What does it do? It also throws up your risks in your supply chain. with respect to climate change, with respect to resource availability, and what could disrupt your entire manufacturing process. That's where it plays a very important role. It is also important for the company to know this and take actions or mitigation plans. So, with all these context, with looking at where do the business wants to go over the next few years, at the same time, what is the global trends that are happening, we need to draw our future strategies. This is our 10-year strategy. You will see there is no commitment on net zero. Every company is talking about net zero. Why? Very simple. When we were discussing this, as we spoke to Mr. Godrej in terms of, let us do a declaration of net zero by 2050. And he said, how many of us will be here to see that we are achieving that? And that was his commitment. He said, yes, we need to intend following the path of 1.5 degree and reaching net zero, but you need to take realistic short-term goals and achieve that within that time frame so that you are transitioning that path successfully. What happens in that is also that you also know the policy changes that is happening. Those policy changes will help you transition the path. Today, the decisions that you have taken would probably get revised after a period of 5 years or 10 years. And the way government today is moving, I'm sure we'll need to revise it every 2 to 3 years. That's the proactive approach government is taking, and we all need to be aligned with it. We can't be behind government. We have to be leading and demonstrating to the government what should be done for this country. And so, collaboration is very important. How do we collaborate as an industry across industries, not only here but globally, through various forums? And that gives us a lot of insight in terms of where the world is moving, what is the customer demanding, and what should we be doing, what are the technologies available, what are other companies doing. It gives a good insight, and this knowledge shouldn't be held to ourselves. It should be spread, it should be shared. Only then we will be able to improve the impact. So I know I have taken a lot of time and I'll very quickly wrap up in 5 minutes, but I think this is very, very important for all of us. There are a lot of challenges in this. We have faced many challenges. We know today we see frequently changing regulations. They suddenly hit us. The EPR regulations have been changing. They are not stabilizing, and industry is grappling with in terms of how do we comply to them. But you have to understand the resource efficiency government is bringing in through the EPR regulations, and I spoke about it. We are also we expect as a company that being sustainable, we can expect premium from our customers. Sorry to burst this bubble, it doesn't work anymore. Your customers expect you as a responsible brand or organization to be sustainable, but also fight on price. And why that you can use this sustainability as a USP for selling your product and drawing more volumes. But no more will anybody give you premium for sustainable products, and that we have to fit in our mind. Otherwise, we will never adopt sustainability. Resource availability risk across value chain is a big risk in terms of water, in terms of raw material, in terms of energy. This has to be assessed before we chart the path on sustainability. Risk-based trade-offs, and I'll give you an example. Generally, a air-cooled system, cooling system, is more energy efficient than a water-cooled system, and we very blindly choose that. But is it the right approach? Before you choose, you should look at what is your water availability risk in that location so that you are making a very conscious choice. Because transitioning from a water-cooled system to air-cooled system is huge cost. And if water is not available, and I said this, unfortunately, we only know the value of water when it is not available, and you can't create it. You can generate energy from various resources, but you can't create water. And we have to be very conscious when we are taking a trade-off on sustainable choices. I mentioned choose green solutions for your green solution. Even when you're choosing a green solution, look at the life cycle impact. Look at which is a more efficient way of product or service. Unless you do that end-to-end impact, don't choose a solution. That's where we make mistake and probably end up paying more cost or more operating cost for a green solution. So we need to be conscious about that. And today there are so many options available. We need to look at life cycle cost and life cycle impact. Credibility and capability and skill set of our teams. Technology is changing, demands are changing, and HR plays a very crucial role in this. Upgrading the skills of our employees to meet the requirements of sustainability is very important. It has to be a focus area. Using green indicators for supply chain evaluation, and we spoke about that, and assessing sustainability risk in the supply chain. So we also spoke about that. We need to have a lot of systems, processes, monitoring, and action when we actually want to enable us to achieve the goals that we have said, laid on sustainability. And this is very important. Align the business purpose to the larger goal of SDG or the NDCs of India or international frameworks. The purpose of the business can't alone be making profit. It has to be to make good for the society. Don't choose 17 SDGs. Choose one SDG, which is contextual to your business, and work on that. So the purpose of the organization has to be larger. Align the business processes and intended outcomes to this purpose when you have set it. Integrate your sustainability and BU processes through business excellence, integrated management system, and many other frameworks that we drive in our organization. All of them needs to be synergetic. It can't be different silos working parallelly to each other. It brings in a lot of stress in the teams. Effective sustainability target review. And it has to be realistic. It has to be looked at with the risk perspective. And it also has to be commitment-based and performance-based. Sustainability indicators need to be part of your KRAs, or the line managers, or everybody in the organization. Data aggregation and support. So for reporting, you need to accumulate a lot of data. We are 14 businesses, and you can understand the challenge we have in aggregating the data on so many indicators. So you need tools and systems for aggregating data from all across the locations and putting out the performance of the organization as a single entity. Compliance, I spoke about compliance, and today this is becoming a more and more pertinent thing. So if you're driving sustainability futuristically, you are risking your business in terms of impending compliance requirements. So we have to look at that in terms of risk mitigation. I was also mentioning about LCA. LCA is a very important tool. You look at the impact of a product, process, raw material over its life cycle. Make a conscious choice of what you're choosing in your manufacturing process, in your manufacturing products. I already mentioned technology, optimize performance and environmental systems like HVAC. These are very low-hanging fruits. And regularly record the triumphs, share it with everybody in the organization so that there is a lot of motivation for future initiatives. Now, what role do you play? All this is very nice. The strategy is made by the CEO, and then it is enforced on everybody in the organization. And so what we say, okay, let the sustainability team do, and let them report. Is it that? No, everybody plays a role. What does the design, R&D, and new product development do? You need to mandate LCA for all existing as well as new product developments. Adopt dismantleability and recyclability in product design. Emphasize on use of monomaterials. Avoid complex materials because they are not recyclable. They are difficult to recycle. Keep it simple. Choose materials and processes based on a LCA approach. Everywhere this tool plays a very, very important role in giving you the right kind of decision. Mandate restrictions on hazardous waste. Let it not be a compliance requirement. We all should mandate in every product, every design, we don't need hazardous materials to be used because its impact is at the end of its life and end of the life of the product. Assess end-to-end product development cycle for evaluating impact. Design for minimal, reusable, recyclable, and sustainable packaging choice as a choice. And consider every component's end-of-life scenario before you take a decision of going ahead with that component as part of your new product development. Sourcing and procurement, we today know it's a very, very key department in driving sustainability. Supply chain assessment being the first role. Demand sustainability performance data from your suppliers. That's a big black hole we know today. But we need to keep insisting. As the CBAM or as the EcoVadis scores require us to declare, we should be asking our suppliers to declare. Educate suppliers and partners on company sustainability commitments. Keep educating them. Do hand-holding, do capacity building, support them. Assess sustainability, resource availability risk for suppliers and manufacturers when you are choosing them. Ask for material safety data sheet. We all ask for safety. I'm saying look at the environmental impacts when you are looking at a material safety data sheet. Use another important thing is make resource use efficiency as a mandatory evaluation criteria for comparisons when you're making a choice of your product and material. Look at a carbon price. This is one tool where companies can bring at par different technologies with respect to carbon. A technology could be cheaper but emitting a lot of carbon, At the same time, there could be another technology which emits a very low carbon. And when you put a price to carbon, in your ROI calculations, the technology or material which has low carbon will turn out to be more cheaper. And why to do this? With mechanisms like CBAM and many other carbon taxes that would come up in future, we are building in that robustness within our systems to take that hit. Or rather, we are making the right choices so that we don't fall into that trap and already are sustainable when we go to do business with international clients. I mentioned look at life cycle impact, but even when you're doing a capital purchase, do that. Look at the life cycle impact of your machineries and systems. Prefer local supplier base, reduce your carbon footprint. Ask what happens to the end of life. That's what you should be asking your suppliers. When you're onboarding suppliers, you ask them, what do I do with this product when it goes out of its life? And they should have the answer in terms of how do you sustainability recycle them. Unless you do that, circularity and resource efficiency in waste management cannot be achieved. Completely eliminate single-use plastics. I think that we all must be doing. Mandate material in packaging to be reused, that I have already spoken. Mandate take back of empty packaging, take back of empty materials or components by the suppliers and ask them what do they do with that take back. And insist on segregation of scrap waste material at source by the user on shop floor. This has to be done at the point of generation. It cannot be done in the waste management facility. Production and manufacturing, I think a lot of people are there, but we can do very simple things. Avoid, restrict wastage of resources, which is, I think, a no-brainer. Compressed air, water, raw material, components. Create source segregation and collection for various waste streams right at the point of generation. Sensitize shop floor operators and workmen on responsible resource use. Insist on knowing what happens to the waste generated for your activities. That is asking the next department who is going to take care of the waste that what are they doing with this. Enable early plugging of any leakages that we know. Very importantly, ensure proper and correct use of available facilities. Like a compressed air line, many people use it for cleaning clothes or blowing off dust. Is that the intended use? And compressed air line we know is an energy guzzler. So we need to plug. Also what we need to do is use IoT in terms of looking at what are those blind spots we had. Like a machine remaining idle is consuming a lot of energy which we never thought of. And we need to look at how do we actually shut down or reduce that. This was always a blind spot, but IoT will help you. Data management will help you get these insights. HR, I mentioned, and I think I don't want to mention what HR can do. We had an elaborate, fantastic presentation on what key role HR can play. And I think this is very basic, but there are companies who are evolved beyond that. And then marketing and sales, I mentioned that you need to educate yourself in terms of company's sustainability strategy and achievements. Use the achievements effectively in marketing collaterals and communications. Don't overcommit, don't greenwash, don't do false commitments. Ask easy to understand versions of achievements. Many of the terminologies marketing people don't know. So how do you make it easier for a customer to understand? That you should ask from the technical teams. Avoid greenwash, and I think this is a big one. Explain the larger benefit to the consumer, but don't expect premium from sustainable products. And this is my own learning over many years in this space. You can't expect. With this thought, I'll leave you with this thought and something to think about in terms of how we can progress on this together. Thank you so much.
Absolutely very wrong if we do not get up and give her a standing ovation. And I had an opportunity to meet you probably 3 years ago. In one of the conferences. Yeah. And I had in my mind that we are going to have a mini MBA on sustainability by you. So wasn't it awesome? Yeah. And we could have continued, sitting and listening to you, to your concepts, your slides, your passion for probably one more hour, 2 hours. Yeah. It was a phenomenal walkthrough introduction to what we can do. And I think it takes a lady to protect Mother Earth. I think that is also a message that came to my mind. They are so much more naturally inclined to be sensitive to all this. So I really have no words to thank you, ma'am. It has been a phenomenal wrap-up to our little attempt from the Kaizen Institute to raise awareness about ESG. I know there are so many seminars and so much happening in this space. This is one more drop of our contribution. But what is different is, which will be very interesting for you, is in this room, 99% I can speak with confidence are from the ESG space. Normally, where there's an ESG conference, it is ESG people for the ESG people by the ESG people, right? Avinash, you would agree. We wanted to bring what is ESG for non-ESG people, because ultimately it is you who have to understand and not give more information to already people in this field. So I think that is our effect. All our friends here are from manufacturing, from operations side. We are pretty well represented. I'm not saying well represented, but we have representation from a hospital. I want to please the doctors from Trichinapalli. I really appreciate you coming and joining. I hope it was. And I don't know, out of courtesy or from your bottom of the heart, you said you really enjoyed listening to the case studies, and they were writing away lots of notes. I thank you for coming. We also have TVS credit, very different. They give credit. Don't approach them right now before going home. TVS credit, and Vinod knows where to sit. So thank you. It's a very different business line. They are from services. Rest of us are mostly from manufacturing. Of course, if there are other people who are not from manufacturing, please raise your hands. Yes, sir. That is quality. Yeah, I know. Of course, quality from a manufacturing company, probably, right? Yeah. But most of us belong to primarily to manufacturing operations. Sadly, not many from construction industry. They cause a lot of.
But just to reiterate, in Godrej, there is one division on construction, and they have the same kind of commitments on Kaizens. It was thought that, construction industry, what would they do Kaizens on? Yeah. And that was our thought as well when we began. But today, the same kind of commitments on all the aspects like sustainability on Kaizens as well, business excellence for all businesses.
Thank you. Yeah, so lean construction and green in construction is very important. And with that note, I would, in the Kaizen Institute, we have a score called KIK, Kaizen in Kaizen, KIK. And I think that was formulated by our bosses, because there are about 45, 50 offices of Kaizen Institute around the world. And we have a KIK audit. It's very simple. If we tell everybody do, say 5S, if you don't do 5S in your own office, I think you should get a low KIK score and get a kick on your back. Okay? So we are very serious about it. It is very important to practice what you preach. And in that spirit, Mr. Vinod Grover established a lean and green office, and it was probably, or we are almost sure, we were the office in Pune that Mr. Grover established was the first small office which was LEED Gold certified. And this was in the year, exactly 10 years ago. And this was not easy because we were a 2,000 square feet office in the middle of a pre-built building, and we had to create our cocoon, make it green, and we got this LEED Gold certification 10 years ago. So that was our little contribution. So this conference probably, it was sort of spinning off right from there. So with that, I would request Mr. Grover to come forward and please hand over this token of appreciation to Madam Joshi for her excellent session.